Philly, Jacksonville, the Rams, Cowboys, Cardinals. Am I the only one that thinks Seattle's going to win out? Am I the only one? I haven't heard anybody else say it yet. What's going on, Hawk fans? This is Rob English, your Socal Seahawk, and thank you for joining me again on another edition of Short Yardage. And we have come to a crossroad. We have come to a big, very important, all important time in this season. Sunday night marks the first of probably two big games Seattle has left this year. They're really all big, but as far as the gravity of the games themselves, Sunday night against the Philadelphia Eagles it's tough to even rank them between 1 and 2. It's the two games I'm referring to is this Sunday against the Eagles and later on against the Rams. In a couple weeks against the Rams. Both those games are going to be huge. Probably the Rams more important, depending on what happens Sunday night. Before we go any further, let me go ahead and just remind you all to check out www.seattlesportsunion.com. That's where you'll find me and the rest of the guys united in Seattle sports, covering everything from the Mariners to the Mist, and of course, the Seattle Seahawks. Follow us on Facebook at Seattle Sports Union, and on Twitter at Seattle Sports U. Like, follow, subscribe. Sunday night, the Seahawks are going to welcome in the Philadelphia Eagles. Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles, who are the consensus best team in football. I mean, you have to say they're 10-1. They lost one game in, I think it was week 2. It was week 2 against Kansas City, if I'm not mistaken. And they haven't looked back since. Haven't really looked very, they haven't looked like they could be stopped, really, by, in most of these games. But where every other team over the past 9 weeks has failed, Seattle will succeed. Yes, I said it. Seattle will succeed. Seattle will be giving the Philadelphia Eagles their second loss of the season on Sunday night. Now, you might think I'm crazy when I say Seattle's going to win out, but if you look at it, it really makes a lot of sense. The month of December is, you can go back and look. The month of December is very, very good to the Seattle Seahawks. Very, very good. In the Russell Wilson era, the Seattle Seahawks have only lost 5 games in the month of December. 17-5. 17-5 since 2012. Is the record in the month of December for Seattle. The month of December is our month. It's right that time of the playoff push when no matter what has looked silly or looked, has gone awry throughout the season, the month of December, we get it going however we need to make the push late, get to the playoffs. It's our month. It's our time. The Eagles are going to walk into a rockin' house. The clink is going to be jumping And Carson Wentz is going to have to deal with the 12s. And these are all just the intangibles. Are we still the same team that just simply cannot lose at home? No. But we are still the Seattle Seahawks, and it's still the clink, and it's still the 12s. And you better believe that the clink is going to be rocking on Sunday night. You better believe it. Just the intangibles. Now, when you look at the game, comparing the two teams, you might think that, Seattle doesn't have a chance. I mean, Vegas opened up with what? I think the Eagles had a 4.5 point advantage. So that the Eagles are expected to win this game when they're giving 4.5 at Seattle. Nobody gives 4.5 at Seattle. So that just tells you how good the world believes the Eagles are. But I believe this is a wake up call to the Eagles. This game might, it has the potential to wake them up and, bring them back down to earth, which may, spring them through the playoffs, wake them up. And who knows, maybe they go to the Super Bowl, if they get through us again. But, this game might be that game that goes, whoop, okay, we're not that as good as we thought we were because we walked into Seattle and got our butts handed to us, or, however it goes. But, this game is not a David and Goliath matchup. Not the way it seems people, think it is. If you're not a Seahawk fan, you think Seattle's going to go ahead and just get run over in this game. But this is not David and Goliath. Now, it's true, Seattle has a tough road ahead of them. To even get to the playoffs for Seattle at this point is truly a testament to everyone who's still on the field. To be with, zero running game and having most of the Legion of Boom hurt. To make the playoffs this year is a win, if you ask me. I know that, a lot of people are not finding happiness in the current state of the Seahawks, and I understand, but there's a point to where you have to you gotta, calm down a bit. I spoke on the show on SSU Live on Sunday, about the fans. There are a lot of poor fans out there, poor Seahawk fans. And this, I said, I'm not the kind of person who's going to call someone a real or fake fan. There's, since 2012, there's been a whole lot of talk around the football world about how fake Seattle fans are, bandwagon this because, we got good. When the reality is any team that encounters newfound success is going to have people who come out of the woodworks, if you will, with their fanhood. And some fans that were just kind of light fans get a little harder, root a little harder. And some fans that weren't fans at all, start putting on jerseys and t-shirts and beanie caps and stuff. I'll tell you straight up. The last time I went home to Seattle, I was taken aback by how just blue and green Western Washington is. I couldn't believe it. I left Seattle 12 years ago, and it was nothing like when I went back about 2.5 to 3 years ago. You couldn't look in any one direction without seeing something Seahawks. When I went home for Christmas a few years ago, I was like, what is this? But that's what happens. It wasn't like that when I lived there. It just simply wasn't like that. And this is even considering when Seattle went to the Super Bowl in 2006. But that's what happens when you have newfound success, especially sustained success. That happens. But this isn't really we don't need to go into how real or not real the Seattle fan is, the Seahawk fan is, because we know how real we are. We know what the Kingdom is all about. But I still do feel in my colleagues at Seattle Sports Union seem to disagree with me. But the Seattle Seahawk fan has got a lot of nerve all of a sudden. It's almost like we've lost our humbleness. We were humble winners for a minute. But now it seems that it's gone to our heads. And I say our, but I'm really talking about you, the poor Seahawk fan. And I'm calling you a poor Seahawk fan, those who you are. The ones who are calling out the team. I've heard for calls to just blow the team up, get rid of everybody except Russell Wilson. Except Russell Wilson, get rid of everyone. Blow thing, just throw everything out, the bathwater and the baby. Keep Russell Wilson, the coaching staff, the general, get rid of everybody and start over? The Pete Carroll, John Schneider, Darrell Bevell detractors? It blows my mind. It blows my mind how quickly the Seattle Seahawks owe something to the fans again. Because why? How quickly the Seattle Seahawk fan is unaccepting of the team that we have. Because why? I don't even understand where the logic comes from. It has to be because we've just gotten in a short period of time, a relatively short period of time. This team the inception of the Seattle Seahawks was back in 1976. Okay. 1976. And that entire time, for the most part, there was a couple of years they went to the playoffs. This is even before my time. I think they've made it in an AFC championship game one time. But for the most part, the Seattle Seahawks have been a average team, below average to average team. I was there for the 2-14 season in the Kingdom. I mean, winning 8 or 9 games was a big deal. We got to the Super Bowl in 2006 with Mike Holmgren. And, then we kind of tailed off. I didn't hear calling for coaching changes and firing Mike Holmgren. Now, Mike Holmgren ended up leaving on his own, but I didn't hear for firing Mike Holmgren. I don't really even remember calling for the firing of Jim Mora. And we all know that Jim Mora was no good. But I don't remember the calling for the firing of him. It may have happened, but I just simply don't remember it. Certainly not as prevalent as I'm hearing for the calling for the necks of Pete Carroll and John Schneider, Darrell Bevell. Like, you gotta be kidding me. I never heard the calling for the necks of Dennis Erickson, Tom Flores, Chuck Knox. It's a long time ago. I was a lot younger back then, but I don't remember those sentiments. But now all of a sudden, the Seahawks are not in the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl, and now Pete, John, and Darrell owe you something extra. I am not going to sit here and say that anyone is a fake fan, but I will say that you're a poor fan if that's your sentiment. You are a poor fan. Every year is not going to be your year. How do you lose sight of the reality that you are still living in a dream world as a Seattle Seahawks fan, despite the shortcomings of the team as we see it now? We're still going to win double-digit games this year, more than likely. We have been winning double-digit games every year. We go to the playoffs every year. We win a playoff game every year. And you want to blow up the whole team. You want to fire Pete Carroll. You want to get rid of John Schneider. Pete Carroll and John Schneider are the entire reason that we are sitting, even as we speak, right in the middle of the greatest era of Seahawk football in franchise history. And you want to get rid of them. Why? I feel when I and trying to explain this to people, I feel like I'm talking to my 4-year-old. It's nuts. It's just nuts. If Pete Carroll walked away right now, you'd be really upset with how this team would turn out. So Seahawks fans, you have to wake up. And I'm not talking about all of you, but the ones I'm talking about, you know who you are. Wake up. If you can't take the team when they're bad, you don't deserve them when they're good. And they're not even bad right now. They're just not 13-3 good. They might be 11. They might be they might be 11-4 good. Or 12-4 good. See, my math is not that great right now. They might be 12-4 or even 11-5 good. But because they're not what, 14-2 or 13-3 good? Fire Pete Carroll and John Schneider? People who just don't get it, I think is what it is too. Even people who aren't really students of the game. You don't have to be a student of the game to be a football fan. I will submit to that. I think it's really what it is. Bad move for signing Blair Walsh. People don't understand that Blair Walsh was the only halfway decent kicker out of a pool of no good kickers. We didn't get rid of Hausch because we just didn't like him anymore. We didn't get rid of Hausch because because we had some disagreement or some beef in the locker room. We just couldn't afford the guy anymore. Hausch is one of the best kickers in football, and he has to get paid like that. And we simply couldn't afford that anymore. We couldn't afford to pay Hausch the kind of money that Hausch deserves. That's why he had to go. That's why you end up with Blair Walsh, who's getting paid a fraction of the money that Hausch is getting paid. And he's kicking like it because that's only how good he is. But there was no one else to sign. If you keep Steven Hauschka, someone else doesn't get to play. We signed the people who, the skill positions that give us the best opportunity, the best chance to win. And you have to make do with the rest. You talk about how John Schneider isn't good because he hasn't addressed the offensive line. Of course they've addressed it. To the best we can. You can only spend so much money on players. And when the bulk of your money is going to your defense and your quarterback, you have to make do with the rest. We did okay for a while. We're having a little bit of a slump, a little bit of a down time, but we're still in the mix. All right, enough about that. Sunday night, Philadelphia Eagles. Now the Seattle Seahawks running game is poor. You'll read in my article, I said, our game has regressed. Our running game is so poor that, I think in any game, if we manage it to get 5 or 6, 5 or 6, decent runs, just decent runs, like a anywhere between a 6 and a 12-yard gain. If we get 5 or 6 of those, I'd say even a 5, between 5 and 12. Forget anything more than that. Between 5 and 12. If we get at least 5 or 6 runs of between 5 and 12 yards in a game, I think we had a decent game. That's just how good we are right now, or how not good we are. If we achieve just that tiny little bit of success, we had a pretty decent game running the football. That's no type of running game. That's just the Seattle running game right now. That's just what it is. It's not going to change anytime soon, especially when the Philadelphia Eagles have the league's best run defense. So we're not running the ball. It's highly likely that we're going to run the ball Sunday night, except for as just a jab. The running game for the Seahawks right now is a jab, like in boxing, but not even a powerful jab. It's not like a Muhammad Ali jab or a Lennox Lewis jab. It's a jab. It's a measurement jab. That jab is only being thrown out there just to measure the distance between you and the opponent. That's all that is. It's not a power shot. On the other hand, you have the Philadelphia Eagles, who have a 3-headed monster of a running game with Jay Ajayi, LeGarrette Blount, and Wendell Smallwood. That group is running for almost 4.5 yards a carry. So their little 3-headed monster, running back committee, they're actually second. Their offense is second in rushing. Eagles have the second best rushing offense. So the good news is that Seattle's run defense is pretty good. Seattle has continued that trend of being one of the better teams against the run in the whole league. We come into this game sitting in the 9th spot in run defense, but that number is that ranking is a little bit skewed, I think, because there was 2 games earlier this year that were pretty uncharacteristic of the Seahawks. Those games being the 49er game and the Tennessee Titans game, where Carlos Hyde busted a big run in that game and DeMarco Murray with Tennessee also busted a big run either the following week or 2 weeks later. And both of those big plays by those guys respectively padded the stats that were otherwise pedestrian. Maybe pedestrian might be a little too strong of a word, but they certainly weren't groundbreaking. Those players' performance in the day was not groundbreaking until those runs. Factoring in those runs, it looks like they had a pretty nice day. So those numbers skewed our totals. But you look at games against Todd Gurley. I think Todd Gurley only had 40 something yards against us. He's been running over people. Adrian Peterson had a couple big games this year, but against Seattle, I think he was in the 30s, if I'm not mistaken. So we are still playing great run defense, and I don't see any reason why that's going to change on Sunday night. They've got 3 different heads to deal with. But I say we're going to hold that down pretty good. They've got a change of pace back there. So they could potentially hit us for some decent runs, but I don't believe it's going to be, too big of an issue. I said we hold down this game, hold down the running game, and this game falls squarely on Carson Wentz to win it for his Eagles. I call back to the Houston game. This is, to me, the same exact thing. I called the Houston game to be put squarely on Deshaun Watson. Take the running game away. That's more or less what we did. The running game was as far as the running backs were concerned, were held mostly in check. put the game in Deshaun Watson's hands, and Deshaun Watson went out there and balled, to the surprise of a lot of people. But it won't be a big surprise when Carson Wentz goes out there and balls, because he's been doing that all year. But you're going to put the game in his hand, make them as one-dimensional as possible, and see what he can do in the clink. That's the only thing that we can do. That's the only thing that we can do right now. The good news is that Russell Wilson, who is our entire offense, make no mistake, Russell Wilson is the entire Seahawks offense right now. Everything goes through Russell. Got some great receivers making great plays out there. Jimmy Graham has finally got his head out of his you-know-what, it appears. But Russell Wilson, I said it in previous weeks. You've heard it before. I'll say it again. As Russell Wilson goes, so goes the Seahawks. And right now, Russell Wilson's going pretty good. We should have been playing at least into overtime against Atlanta, a couple weeks ago. But, you know, the kicker, I'm blaming it on the kicker. Now, you don't have to agree with me. And I know it's not always the right thing to do, or sometimes it's never the right thing to do, or whatever. I blame it on the kicker. Yes, a lot of things could have happened in that game earlier. I blame it on the kicker against Atlanta. I'm never going to let that go. He shorted the kick from 52. I blame that on the kicker. I don't care what you say. Every kicker in the league can kick a football 52 yards. He shorted it. If he had missed it left or right, but had the distance, I wouldn't feel this way. But he shorted the kick. Anyways, leave that alone. We are out there scoring with these teams who are scoring on us. For some reason, we can't figure out how to score on them when they don't score on us, but we don't lose games by more than one score. Against Houston, against Tennessee, a good amount of points scored. We scored right there with them. Lost that game by 5, I believe. 1 score game. Against Houston, big numbers on the scoreboard. Won that game. Great ending to that game. Against Atlanta, a lot of points on the board. Hung in right there with them. Should have been playing into overtime, but came up short. But we hung in there with them. 3-point game. Philly's not going to come in there and beat us by 10 or 13 or 16 points. We're going to score with them. Russell Wilson currently sits tied for 3rd in the NFL in passing yards. He's in the MVP conversation, whether you like it or not. It's hard not to give it to Carson Wentz right now, I believe, but he's in the conversation. If we go out there and beat Carson Wentz, he'll certainly be in the conversation. As long as Russell Wilson's on his feet, we have a chance in this game. He is our entire offense. I've said in previous weeks, and I'll say this again. We are now seeing that Russell Wilson really is the instrument. He's instrumental. He's the instrumental piece of this team, of this offense, of this team. People always wanted to discount Russell Wilson because he had Marshawn Lynch, and you discounted Russell Wilson because he had the LOB and the great Seahawks defense. But now Russell Wilson has neither one of those two things. And look at his stats. He's doing everything for the Seahawks. It's come down to him having to do it all, and he's doing it, and still with the same silly smile on his face. Russell has 23 or 24 passing touchdowns. And the Seahawks have 4 rushing touchdowns, and 3 of them were scored by Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's doing it all. And doing it all with with a 95 above a 95 quarterback rating. So he's doing it proficiently. I think he's completing 65 or 67% of his passes. So my prediction in this game is a typical Seahawk game. I think the Eagles come out firing. No surprise there. Seattle's going to play catch up in this game. Or I should say play chase. Hopefully we don't have to play catch up, but I will say play chase. We'll keep it close, but we'll be behind until I say either late third, probably early fourth. We're going to force a turnover. I say probably, we get to Carson Wentz. Maybe Mike Bennett forces a fumble, something like that. We're going to turn that turnover into points. Take the lead. Russell Wilson will drive us down and take the lead. And then the defense will stave off a late rally. A late Carson Wentz rally will be staved off by the Seattle Seahawks defense. 35-31 final Seahawks on Sunday night. That's how it's going to go down. We're then going to go to Jacksonville and beat Jacksonville. Then we're going to go to, we're going to come back home for the Rams. And then we're going to go to Dallas. And then we're going to go to Arizona. Or Arizona's coming here, wherever the game is. The Seattle Seahawks are going to win out. If you just think about it. It's December. We don't lose in December. We're going to win out. Very good chance that the game against the Rams will be for first place in the division, but it won't get us out of the woods, unfortunately, because it's not the last game of the year. We beat the Rams and take over first place in the division if we're not there by the time we get to the Rams. But we still have to play football because, there's 1-2 more games after that. But just remember, you heard it here. We are going to win out. And we're going to start. Well, we started last week with San Francisco, but the big one this Sunday night against the Eagles, 35-31 Seahawks. Rob English called it. All right, Seahawk fans, that's all I got. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to my rant. Don't forget, check us out, SSU Live. Normally we do our shows on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. after the game, following up, giving our objective review of the game. But we have a night game this Sunday, huge game against the Eagles. And we're going to do a little bit different. We're going to start the broadcast at about 4:30, and our hour broadcast is going to lead us right into the game. So we're going to do a pregame this week. So keep on the lookout for us. 4:30 Sunday for the pregame show, and also make sure you tune in. We're going to have Jessica Hopkins, the Jessica Hopkins from the Seattle Mist, the world champion, Legends Football League champion, Seattle Mist, Jessica Hopkins, safety, wide receiver. She's going to be joining us on the show. And she's going to talk football with us, talk Seahawks with us. She's a big time Seahawk fan. If you follow her on Instagram or follow her on Facebook, she's always posting about the Hawks. So it's going to be real fun to get Jessica on the show with us. So we're going to get her on there and talk some football and all that good stuff. So tune in. This is Rob English signing off. Go Hawks.